All right, morning, guys. What I'm going to try to do this morning is to go over the exercise that I gave you, right? I'll actually do B and C, right? All right, like I indicated, if you look on page 121 to 122 in your textbook, there's quite a few examples that you can follow through with, right? So I need you to go ahead and go over the examples, and after you're done with the examples, you could go ahead and attempt question E, right? So I leave question E for you to do on your own, and this one I'll mark over 15. All right, so the other two examples, C and B, I'm gonna do it for you. I'm gonna show you how to go about setting up your IPO table and breaking down the problem into those three sections. All right, so the first question reads, it says read 6 numbers and print the largest numbers to the screen. All right, so the first thing that you need to look at, what are your inputs? What would be your inputs and what would be your output? Because if we know what the input is and we know what output we expect, we can work out the difference between the input and the output, which will be our process, right? So from the notes that I gave you, because you had to reference it to do that problem, it says that there's some keyword that you need to look for when setting up your IPO table, right? We look at words for input, words like read and so on, and words for output, such as display. So those are keywords that tells you basically tells you what's coming next after those keywords. So if I say something like output or display the total on the screen, it means that from display, everything after that would be displayed on the screen, and so that would be output, right? Okay, so let's just go over question B. So it reads, read 6 numbers and print the largest number to the screen. So what would be your input, right? So think of it. I guess give you a few seconds to just think of it. What would be your input there? What would be required from the user? Right? Read. It says read. So 6 numbers. That will be your input. Right? So read 6 numbers. That's basically your input. Bear in mind I underline numbers. Right? Because remember, we're setting up the IPO table with the intention of creating a program. Right? A program that's going to be based off that IPO table. So it means that we don't use the actual values. We're going to use what we call a variable. And in your notes, I explained to you what a variable is and what is not a variable. So how a variable should be written. So just let me just go over what a variable basically is. So a variable basically is a structure in a programming language that holds a value, right? So it holds a value. For example, in maths, we do x is equal to 10. And someplace down in the problem, we will be asked, what is x? X is 10. So x basically is a program construct that actually holds the value of a value which we can express, right? So anywhere we display x, we actually displaying 10, right? So the same as using the IPO table, we're not going to be using the number itself value, but we're going to be using a name that holds the value. So that's why I underline number. Right? So okay, so we established that our inputs would be read 6 numbers, and the number would be a variable that would actually hold the actual value of the number. Right? So which part would be our output? Because that's the two basic things that we need to get. Because once we know the input and we know the expected output and we know the output, then it's much easier for us to get the process, because the process would come between the input and the output. Right? So what would be your output here? Remember the keywords? One of the keywords you see in here is print. So print, display, and all such word will tell you that what comes after needs to be outputted. Right? So we have, so if we look at the problem here, we see that print the largest number. So basically we want the largest number. Right? So here we have it. So we have our input and we know what our output is. So let's see how we express that on the IPU table. Alright, so here's how it should look. Right, so for the input, that's what we give to the that's what the user gives us. The input would be a number. Right? How many times we need to repeat that process? 6 times. So it says in the process, it says repeat 6 times. Right? So the first thing we need is the input, and the input will be number. And what is our output? What is the result that we're looking for? We're looking for the largest number. So largest number would be here our output. Now how do we get from input to output? That would be our process. Right? So we know what the user is giving us, and we know what answer we want. Now we need to work out the difference. So that's what problem solving is all about, working out the difference there. So the difference is the processing part. So for processing, we have repeat 6 times, because they ask for 6 numbers, and we have to find the largest among them. So in our program, in our processing portion, we're going to read the number that the user give us, and if the current number is less than the number that they give us, then the current number, which is as we say, a variable that holds a value, it will be equal to number, which will be now the largest number. Right? And after you do that, you loop over that 6 times. The largest number, which is a variable again, that holds the value of the current number, which would then be the largest number. We assign it to our output. Right? So let me just go over that again. So we require a input from the user, and the input will be a number. Right? Then we require it 6 times, because you're gonna have to input 6 different numbers. Now as part of our process, we want to read the number. So each time the user input a number, we would read that number, and we would compare it with the past number that we have, which is represented by the current number. So the past greater number that we had, the highest number that we had, we'll compare it. So if the number that the second number they put in is higher than the first number, right, it will assign that number to the current number variable. Right? And if we repeat that process 6 times, the current number variable will hold the larger number, or the largest number. And that number at the end of it, we will go ahead and assign it to the largest number variable. And then we would output the largest number variable in our output. Alright? So this one is a little bit challenging, but again, we have examples on page 121 and 122. And that's why I ask you to go ahead and review that information, because you need to, because you're being homeschooled now, that means that it takes a little bit more from you. So you have to do a little more, right? So I'm going to have to send you in the book from time to time to go through some examples. All right. After you do the examples from, I think, 1 to 8 in the text, you can also do exercise 2, which would be on page 123, just so that you get the hang of it, right? All right, so let's go to the next question. So the next question was, calculate 20% of the restaurant's bill, and it says the total bill was $78.22. Okay, again, we look at that problem, and let's look for inputs. What are your inputs? What is that you're going to be supplying to the program, or the user is going to be supplying to you? The inputs, right? So if you look at the problem, it says calculate. So calculate, already again based on the notes that we get, calculate says that is a process, because it's a process of calculation. So that cannot be our input, even if it comes first in the problem. So that's a little bit tricky. Even if it comes first in the problem, it is not part of our inputs, right? It is part of the process. But if you look at the subject, what it's talking about the restaurant's bill. So here it is, a key thing there, the subject. So you have to look at that at sometimes, look at what they are actually talking about. So the subject here is restaurant's bill, right? So that would be your input. And what is your output? It says here the bill total was whatever it is. So let's look at the inputs first, right? So the input would be restaurant's bill, and our output would be the total bill, right? So input is the restaurant's bill, the output is the total bill, and what comes in between would be the process. So that would be the calculation. So that's where we do the 20% off the restaurant's bill. So let's look at it in the IPU table, or the IPU chart. All right, so for inputs, we have the bill, or we could call it restaurant's bill, right? Again, your variable, the variable that you're using, it should be descriptive to what basically you're involving in. So you're talking about the bill, so you could name it bill, you could name it restaurant's bill, or customer bill, or something related to what the problem is about, right? So inputs, we have the bill, and the outputs, we know that we want the total bill. And they say that it's 20% off, right? The total is 20% off the restaurant's bill. So as part of our process, we're going to work out a percentage of the bill. So if you look at here, you realize that the actual figures are not there, but values are not there, but we use variables to represent the values, right? Because in programming, when you create a program, basically you should be able to use different inputs and get a correct result, right? For example, if you're using let's say for example using the you do multiplication, right? You can use the multiplication sign and to use any two values and multiply them together and get a correct output, right? So similar to a program, for example, you should be able to plug in different values in the system and get a correct output. So whether the bill is $1,000, $100, whatever the user inputs into the system, after being processed, the output should be correct, right? And that is something that we would go through. We'll go through what we call a trace table to confirm that our program is actually working correctly. But we'll come to that point, all right? So for the restaurant's bill, for example, if we say the user input $100, the process would be 20% of $100, and then the output would be the total bill, whatever it is, right? Okay, so that's pretty much it. I hope you guys understand it this time around. I'm gonna have to leave question 1, the A in the exercise. I'm gonna have to leave it for you all to do on your own. Right, so you can go through examples. This one I'm gonna mark it for sure, so make sure you go through examples, take your time and get it solved, so I can go ahead and give you a mark for it. Okay.